Starting. There we go. Hello and welcome to this week's Folkloring Life Live. And today we're going to be talking about pendulums and how to use them. And then we're going to go through a little bit of a tutorial and help you figure out how your pendulum works for you and how you can use it in your day-to-day life. So welcome, Jill. Welcome anyone else who's here on the live.
Lorraine's with us.
Oh, hi. Hey, Lorraine. How are you? So I'm going to start out by showing you some examples of different pendulums. And I love the pendulum. I use mine every single day, multiple times a day. So I've collected a few. And my first one, this is the first pendulum I ever got. It's got a very short chain. And I actually went to a class, a one-on-one tutorial in person, actually, and bought this at that. And so I have a great fondness for this one. I like the little cross at the top. I don't use this day to day anymore. This is more like my travel pendulum, and I keep it in my purse because the chain is so short, and I feel like I get better results. This one is my day to day, and you can see how much longer the chain is, and I feel like I get better results. And truth be told, I'm a little bit superstitious about it, and when I use it, I don't cross my legs. I just like have to make sure that I lean forward. I do it over the palm of my hand when I use it. And I keep it kind of low, which is, hilarious if I'm out in public somewhere and I want to do a little pendulum work. But yeah, this one is my day to day. I got this at the Ren Fair. And so I like it a lot. Then this other one that I have, and it's a little hard to see the detail on there, but this one is really interesting because it is a chakra pendulum, basically. And so inside, it's got little stones. And I have them in all of the colors of the chakras. And depending on what I want to work on, I put the different stones in. But that's because I'm kind of fancy. You don't need to be fancy. You can I've used in the past, this is just a pendant on a chain that I've used. You can, like this one is, I don't know if you can see, but it's two people that are intertwined. And I use this sometimes if I'm working on like love divination, if I want to see where a relationship is going, something like that. I like keys. You don't have to, again, this is like, I'm just fancy and I like that kind of key. You can use your regular old house key, whatever you have. Sometimes I will use, this is the inside workings of a watch. And so if I want to look into the future, I might tie a string to this and use it. And again, it's about the symbolism. I have an antique button that I have used on occasion. This one, I probably wouldn't use anymore. I have used a button just like this, but I wouldn't because the place where I would tie to it is in the center, and then it's hanging straight down, and I kind of like it to hang straight up. Now, things that I wouldn't use something like a pen because it's hard to get it balanced correctly. If you want to, go for it. It's like whatever you feel like you want to use, whatever you have handy and available, particularly if it has some sort of symbolic meaning that ties into the kind of reading you're trying to do. Now, when you use the pendulum, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of program our pendulum. We're going to see what it is, how our pendulum works for us, because everybody has different patterns that mean yes and no and neutral, right? I know what mine are already because I work with it all the time. I will talk you through a process that you can use before you use your pendulum each time to make sure it's properly attuned. I don't really do it anymore. I used to do it religiously. Every time I was going to do a reading, sometimes in the middle of readings, I would stop and ask it a series of questions. And I'll go through those with you once we've determined what your yes, no, and maybe are. And you really have to ask yes and no questions, and you have to get really specific about them. I do want to caution you that if you're doing readings for yourself, the pendulum is picking up on your energy. And so if you're doing a reading and you have a really strong opinion on what you want the outcome to be, your pendulum might pick up on that energy and you may just get the answer that you want. So you do have to be really cautious and start out with questions that you're not super invested in. Or questions for other people. So that's just it's one of those things that it's really easy to do, and I try to avoid doing a lot of readings for myself because I do have strong opinions and I do really want the answers I want. Now, there's a couple of different things. If you're starting out, this was a book that I started out with when I was first learning, and it's really interesting. It gets into a really deep dive, and it's called Pendulum Magic for Beginners by Richard Webster. And it's just a lot of really interesting things to think about when you're deciding what you're going to use your pendulum for. So it's a nice deep dive, but it's really approachable. So what kinds of things are we going to use our pendulum for? Like I said, it's yes or no question, or you may get a neutral answer, like a maybe. And you can do things like if you want to find out if a certain food is good for you or if you're maybe a little bit sensitive to it and it's not a great fit. You can use your pendulum for that kind of thing. And I am often stared at the grocery store when I do that. And I'm fine being the weird one. You can look for lost objects. And you start a little bit broader. I would start with, like, if I've lost my keys, like, are my keys in the house, right? And you get your yes or no answer, and then you ask, like, are my keys in the kitchen? Are my keys in my bedroom? And you start to narrow it down. So you can use it for that. Lots of people use it for divination and looking at what's going to happen in the future. And like all divination, I think it's really about the interpretation. So when you're looking to the future, part of it is the way that you see how that divination comes out. And again, if you're doing readings for yourself, just be careful. So there are different methods. I'm going to teach you a method where you don't need anything but your pendulum, but there are people who do divination with things like dominoes that are like, you put them all face down, and every combination, if it's like a 2 and a 5, it means a particular thing. And in the book you can get those answers. Some people will use numerology and have set of 9 envelopes and mix them up and have numbers 1 through 9 in each envelope and look to the symbolism of those numbers based on your traditional numerology. So people can do it like that. Some people do past life readings, and they again start general, like start with the countries and sort of narrow it down. Start with which century was it in, and then narrow it down to get to the years and how long you lived and that kind of thing. And it's again, if you're doing a past life reading and you're a king or a queen, that might be a little bit of wishful thinking. I find that I have never had a reading in which I was anyone famous. Mostly I've had readings where I was, a servant or a housewife. So yeah, again, cautious when you're doing stuff for yourself. a lot of people use a pendulum for communication with spirit, and they figure out who it is. Is there a spirit in the room? Ask that yes or no question. And then you can narrow it down to who you're talking to. And maybe you know them, maybe you didn't. So the other way that people will be using it is dream interpretation. Because a lot of times you have a dream and you're like, I wish I knew what that meant, but you don't. And so you can start to ask questions about the symbolism in your dream. And that's sort of a back door into your subconscious. So that's, again, anything that you can ask yes or no questions about is something that is available to you. Now, another way that people use their pendulum is with pendulum charts. And I like this one. It's got a bunch of various charts. A lot of them are about health issues. And certainly there are lots of people using their pendulum for health issues and to figure out what's going on with their body. And so the first one is just a yes, no percentage of probability. There are essential oil charts, there's food supplement charts, there's parasite charts. So yeah, a lot of these are about health. There's even like healing remedies, relationship compatibility, what's happening, which is, I think, really interesting. It's, and again, this is all about the body, like greed, selfishness, fatigue, stress, limitations. So you can sort of figure out what it is that you're going through. This one is a lot of fun. It's what am I telling myself chart. And it's about sort of those stories inside that you're telling, because a lot of times we have internalized stories about who we are and how we are. And so this is a way to, again, kind of get around your conscious mind and see what's going on behind it. And then I even have a plant and soil chart or a house inventory. So a lot of different ways that can, and the way that these charts work is that you've got sort of this scale, and you just hold the pendulum over it and you ask the question that is about whatever that chart is, and then wherever the pendulum swings, and you sort of read the answer of where the pendulum swings. And these are pretty easy to get. You can get them at the bookstore, you can get them on Amazon. And so if you don't know what to ask, that might be a good way to go for you, because it helps guide you, and you can just flip through there and be like, oh yeah, I am wondering about, what my soil pH is. And, but it's a good prompt, I think. And it's a good way to get answers that are more complex than what you can ask when you don't have it. So any questions so far, Jill? In the chat. Oh, hey, Nicole. Go ahead.
Can you use, can you print off those kinds of charts online and do it that way?
As a matter of fact, you can. This one is.
Let me ask a little bit further question. Can people find these in your school community, Folkloring Life?
I don't have any in my community right now, but I absolutely will upload some in the classroom. I do
later
have
today.
Yes, I will do that today. Okay. For another 2.5 hours, because I am in meetings for the next couple of hours. But I will say that I will put them up and you can get to it in the classroom. You don't have to be, you can be a level 1, but I do have a private community, so you would have to join. So hopefully that would be something you'd be into, and I'd love to have you join me. So, okay, so any other questions in the chat? Oh, Carolina, I'm so glad that that's helpful. Okay, great. So, Carolina, okay. All right, so we are on to the action part. Um, so like I said, I'm a little superstitious. So I balance my elbows on my knees, right? And I do it and I sit a little bit forward because that's just what feels good. It feels like it keeps my hands steadier. And so I do it that way. If I feel like I'm having little micro movements that are actually moving my pendulum, I will actually lean my hand up against my forehead and do it this way to keep it more still. But what we're going to do, we're going to start with a very simple question that you are strongly confident that you know the answer to. And you may start with, I'm going to say, is my name Tracy? Right? And so and then you just hold it steady and you ask your question and you see if there's any movement. And you see what direction it goes. Does it go in a circle? Does it go in a straight line back and forth? And just observe that. And not everybody gets movement their first time. So it's something that you do need to practice. And you want to, if you do see movement, that's great. Some people get it right away. And if you don't, just continue to sort of ask questions that are simple, that you're not invested in a strong way. Don't say, am I going to marry so and so, right? If if you really want that, you may get a false yes. But ask simple questions. Ask about, is for me, is my address 1905 Noise? And I get my yes, because that's where it is. And so I don't know if is anyone trying it and seeing any movement at all. If you've tried it and you've gotten a yes for a question or a no if you're asking something that you know is not true. Did you get it, Jill?
I asked 2 yes questions and I got one direction, and I asked a no question and I got the other direction. So
Okay.
I
Yeah,
feel good about this.
Good. So my yes is in a circle, and it goes in a circle. My no is sort of, it goes back and forth across my palm in that direction, and my maybe goes back and forth this direction. So Puck says hi. He's not worried about his future, except the next time he's going to eat. So yeah, and what you do then is once you feel pretty confident that you know what your yes and no is, and you can start asking questions that you don't know the answer to and see where it is that you end up, right? And so maybe it's something like, am I going to get this promotion? Or am I going to, I don't know, whatever it is. And again, try and keep it fairly low stakes at this point because you're strengthening your practice right now. And so you don't want to dive in and get some false readings. So if anybody is in watching and is trying this, just let us know in the chat because I'd love to hear how it's working for you. So you can ask questions about other people, for other people if you want. You can ask questions about the future. You can ask questions that help you make decisions. So and also, as I said earlier, about different health issues. Or you can, go back to your charts or the charts that you print off and just follow where those lead you. Now, the other thing that I want to do, now that you know what your yes and no are, or once you know what your yes and no are, when I was originally taught, I was taught to sort of program the pendulum before each reading and make sure that it's not being influenced in any way by something negative. So the first question I was taught to ask is, pendulum, will you tell me the truth and only the truth? And you want to get a yes. If you get a no on that, you want to focus your energy on the pendulum and ask it again. And don't start your reading until you get that yes answer. The next question is, pendulum, will you ever lie to me or tell me something to make me believe something that's not true? And we're hoping that you get a no on that one. Once you get your no on that, then we move on to pendulum. Will you only get answers from my subconscious or from beings of light that wish me well? And you want to get your yes on that one, obviously. Sorry, it's so low that you can't see where my pendulum is moving. I'll try and hold it a little higher. And then the last question is, pendulum, will you ever take answers from my conscious minds or beings that wish me harm? And obviously, you want to get a no on that. So it's not difficult to start. It may be difficult to get your yes and no to begin with. If you're sort of shutting it down, or you don't, you're like, is this really real? Am I really doing this? If you're super woo like me, then it is easier to believe. So any questions, any thoughts? Do you feel like this is something that you can try, that it'll be fun to do in the future?
I actually did it once many years ago when I was pregnant with my third son, because I was trying to figure out what gender he was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to wait a long time before you could get the ultrasounds back in those days. And so it told me he was going to be a boy. And
Mm-hmm.
I was excited about that. And turned out he was. And then just now, in just asking a few questions,
Uh-huh.
there's a very distinct movement one way or the other. So
Mm-hmm.
it's because they were definitely yes or no questions that I was asking. So it was really easy to feel confident about the answers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Yesterday, so there's this job opportunity that came up for me,
Mhm.
and I first said, am I going to get this job? And I got a resounding yes. And I was like, ah, that's fantastic. Like, I'm excited. And then I said, well, okay, maybe I'm excited about it. So I said, should I take this job? And it was an immediate no. And so I said, will I regret it if I start in this job? And it was like, yes, you will regret it. And then weirdly, I said, should I interview for this job? And it was a yes. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? I wonder what benefit if I like, and the organization is problematic. And I've been working with them for like 30 years, but not as an employee. And so it was just such an interesting thing. Like, I know they have a problem, and I was like, I can fix it, right? But then it's like, no, no, don't do it. You're gonna regret it. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna stay the course with my Substack and school. So that was really useful for me. And I don't know, was that my intuition? It might have been me saying, Tracy, you already know that this organization has problems and the board of directors is a huge red flag and all of this. it could have been my intuition. And so when you think about how does the pendulum work? Is it your guides or spirit? Maybe. Is it your energy? We know that we can transfer energy into other people, into objects. So it may just be you focusing your energy and it moves the pendulum. And is it micro movements? A lot of people claim that. I try really hard when I get like a strong answer to be sure that my hand is not moving, especially if it's an unexpected answer, because if it is my subconscious just saying, hey, danger zone, because again, we tell ourselves a lot of stories that may or may not be true. So, what's the actual mechanism? I don't know. It could be any one of those things, but I've found it to be incredibly accurate. And I know that there are people who use pendulums for dowsing. I think that most of the people I've talked to that do like water dowsing, which I do not do, they use the bars. But people do definitely use a pendulum for that too. So, and I guess that falls under the topic of finding hidden objects, because it's hidden water. And my old co-host of my podcast used to, her husband would douse for water, and they live in the mountains in North Carolina. And he would, when somebody wanted to dig a well, they'd call him up and he'd go out there and he knew where to dig the well. So
I've done
anyway,
that in my backyard.
really, did it work?
I know where there's water in my backyard. And usually you can look for trees because trees pull water to them.
Yeah.
But I know where, if I was going to dig a well in my backyard and we were thinking about it.
Oh, that would be very cool. So you know exactly where to go.
Mm-hmm.
Did you plant?
Straws and coat hangers, the metal coat hangers.
Oh,
You
you
bend
just
them and you put them in the straws and you walk out there with them and they'll wiggle around. But when there's water, they'll go together and they'll point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like I said, I haven't done it. I know that in the past, in the city of Chicago, they would hire like dowsers that would find like leaks in the, like the waterworks. And that's how they would determine. And it was like that was a contracted position, and it was not like something that they were kind of like doing on the down low. It was just like, yep, that's what we use these guys for. So it
They
can
pay
be,
remote viewers. I mean,
yeah.
people make money for remote viewing. Some of this stuff sounds really like way out there, but it's just because you think it's weird doesn't mean it doesn't work.
Exactly. I have a friend who is, she was in the FBI, and we walk sometimes. She's retired now, but we would walk and I'd be talking about this stuff as I was like writing my book, and these things would come up. And I said, would you ever use a psychic? And she's like, I will try anything. She's like, if it works, it's fine. And then she told me a story about a psychic who found a location, like longitude and latitude of this person that had gone missing. And she's like, yeah, she's like, I don't care. I'm not going to be embarrassed by that. So a lot of this stuff does sound amazing, but it's our energy at work, and it's the connections we have around us. Okay, so to sort of wrap this up, so get your yes and no and your maybe, and start to work with it. And at first, you kind of want to practice every day. If you want to be sure that you're thinking about, oh, Nicole, that's very cool. Your grandfather used to douse for water. That's very cool. If you want to be sure that you're getting your answers from where you want, you can do that little, asking it, are you telling me the truth? Are you ever going to tell me something's not true? Am I getting those answers from my subconscious, or, spirits that wish me well? Am I getting my answers from my conscious mind, or spirits that wish me harm? And you can do that. like I said, I use my pendulum all the time, so I feel like it's always kind of charged the right way. If I go off on vacation and I haven't used it for a couple of weeks, I might go through that process again. But when you think about things that you're going to be using it for, are you going to tell the future? Are you going to ask it about love? Are you going to look for health issues? Remember to get super specific in your questions and start a little bit larger. Are my keys in the house? And then work your way down so you can get more and more specific answers. And that is really the essence of using the pendulum. And like everything else with magic, now, like once you start it, you're going to spend the rest of your life mastering it, right? And so you will get better and better answers, in part because you're going to start asking better and better questions. And I have certainly asked questions that I thought were pretty straightforward, but it's like, getting the genie out of the bottle and you've got your 3 wishes. You better be really clear on what you're wishing for, because the pendulum can have trickster energy as well. And you can ask a question in such a way that it's getting you the answer, but it's not getting you the right answer. So make sure your questions are clear and specific. And that's really the heart of using the pendulum. So thanks everybody for joining, and I really appreciate it. So go and divine the future, divine your health issues, divine anything that you want with your pendulum. And for those of you who joined a little bit later, I was using my fancy pendulum, but you don't have to. You can tie a key to a string. You can use a pendant on a chain. You can use whatever you have with you. If I was in a pinch and I didn't have anything else, I would use my tea ball that I use for loose leaf tea, because it's the exact right shape. You don't want to use anything too heavy, because that may limit the motion. So be careful. But like I said, you can just use a little pendant on a chain and that works just fine. And just be sure that when you're using your pendulum, you are clear and you are paying attention to what the energy is telling you. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
And we can learn more about this kind of stuff by
if you want to be in conversations like this regularly, you can join my school community, which is Folkloring Life. As I said earlier, I'm going to post some pendulum charts for you there in my classroom, so you'll be able to find those later today. And you can follow me here on Substack. And I look forward to having more conversations with all of you.
This has been great. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.